has observed, not even the most brutally depraved of the conquistadors was able purposely to slaughter Indians on the scale that the gentle priest unwittingly accomplished by going from his sickbed ministrations to lay his hands in blessing on his Indian converts. Similarly, the morally revolting history of discrimination and expropriation against the indigenous populations of the Western Hemisphere have often too easily been accepted as causal explanations of their generally lower socioeconomic levels in the various societies of the Americas. Yet, from a causal perspective, there was never any reason to have expected them all to have acquired the levels of Western technological skills and organizational development which took centuries to evolve in Europe, since Eastern Europeans generally continue to lag behind Western Europeans in these respects. More than 1,000 years after the Slavs first entered East Central Europe, there is little basis for attributing all economic lags of American Indians in European offshoot societies to the biases of the majority populations of those societies. How much is in fact due to discrimination and how much to cultural lags is an empirical question, not a foregone conclusion. In the United States, for example, by the 1980s, American Indian males earned incomes quite comparable to those of white males, when various language, demographic, and other factors were held constant, even though American Indian males as a whole were still earning markedly less than white males as a whole. The proportion of the Indian and Mestizo populations in 20th century Latin America has ranged from negligible in Argentina to demographically dominant in Peru, where in 1990, Spanish-speaking mestizos were 37% of the population and Quechua-speaking Indians were 45%. Full-blooded Indians have tended to be the least favored, both by nature and man. Biological resistance to European diseases came first to those who were part European themselves, as well as being more likely to move in a social milieu where there were Europeans from whom they could acquire biological resistance and social acculturation to the transplanted European civilization of the Western Hemisphere. In addition, both whites and mestizos often disdained and discriminated against the full-blooded Indians. The highland peoples of Peru, for example, the descendants of the Incas, were at one time referred to by the mestizos as brutes and savages, and were forced to step aside, sit in the back of buses, and otherwise humble themselves before those considered their social betters. The thrust of Peruvian education was to get the less assimilated Indians to